Welcome to the Explainer. So, if you want to really get what's happening with the protests in Iran today, you've got to look back, way back. We're going to trace this incredible 125-year story of oil, democracy, and foreign interference to see exactly how Iran got to this moment.
You know, the headlines coming out of Iran can seem super complex, right? But really, they all boil down to this one powerful question. Why is the nation's history this constant, repeating cycle of hope and then foreign interference? The answer? Well, it reveals a pattern that's defined Iran for more than a century.
Okay, let's dive in. We're going to start with a pretty wild oil deal, then move through derailed democracies and a foreign-backed coup. And all of that follows the revolutionary spirit that brings us right up to the protests we're seeing today. All right, so our story kicks off in the early 1900s, and it's all tangled up with the British Empire's hunt for the one resource that was about to change everything: oil. So it all got started back in 1901. This British prospector, a guy named William Darcy, he goes to Iran's ruler. Now, this ruler was part of the Qajar dynasty, and, the stories say these monarchs were, well, let's just say they were maybe more interested in their opium dens than in the country's future.
And the deal they struck? Whoa. It was staggering. I mean, just imagine this. For every $100 of oil pulled out of Iranian ground, Iran's rulers would get just $16. That's it. An 84-16 split, all in Britain's favor. And that deal, right there, planted a seed of resentment that was just going to grow and grow for decades.
And you know what? That resentment didn't take long to bubble up. Just a few years after that totally lopsided deal, the Iranian people made their first big push for self-determination. So in 1906, you have this powerful pro-democracy movement that actually forces the monarchy to accept a constitution. They create a parliament called the Majlis. I mean, can you imagine? It was this moment of just incredible hope for the country. But a democratic Iran? That absolutely terrified the British. Why? Because they were afraid that a government that actually represented the people would take one look at that 84-16 oil deal and just tear it up. So what did they do? They actively sabotaged it. They started funding anti-democratic forces and even encouraged Russia to invade from the north. Anything to stop a real democracy. Okay, let's fast forward a bit to after World War II. That same democratic spirit, it was still very much alive. And Iranians made another run at taking control of their own destiny. But this time, the key foreign player wasn't Britain. It was the United States. The person leading this new charge was the democratically elected Prime Minister, Mohammad Mossadegh. And he did what so many Iranians had been dreaming of for years. He nationalized the British-controlled oil industry. He basically said, "This is our oil. It belongs to our people." Well, the British were furious. They got kicked out of their embassy and ran straight to the United States for help. At first, President Truman said no. He wasn't about to go overthrowing a democracy. But then his successor, President Eisenhower, came along. He didn't have the same hesitation. He gave the CIA the green light. So, the CIA, led by Teddy Roosevelt's own grandson, Kermit, came up with this, well, shockingly simple plan to orchestrate the coup. Step 1. Use bags of cash to hire a bunch of fake protesters off the street. Step 2. Stage so-called pro-Mossadegh rallies that, surprise, surprise, intentionally turned violent. Step 3. Use those fake rallies to create total chaos, trashing the city. And then, the final step, use that chaos as the perfect excuse for a military takeover. And you know what? It worked. The coup was a success, and it absolutely crushed Iran's democratic hopes. The Shah, who had been a constitutional monarch with limited power, was put back on the throne as an absolute dictator. And for the next quarter century, he'd be backed by the United States. And those 25 years of autocratic rule, of suppressing dissent, that led directly to this massive explosion of popular anger that we all know as the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Okay, so a really defining moment of that revolution was the U.S. Embassy hostage crisis. And you have to understand the two different things happening here. The student protesters who stormed the embassy, they had one main goal: find the CIA documents that would prove to the entire world that the U.S. had overthrown their democracy back in '53. Meanwhile, inside, the CIA guys had their own, very different goal: shred every single one of those documents before they could be found. But the students' determination was just incredible.
They gathered up all these bags full of shredded paper, took them to local schools, and piece by tiny piece, like a giant impossible puzzle, they actually reassembled the top-secret documents. This was the proof. They showed the world what many Iranians had suspected all along. The U.S. had destroyed their democracy. But here's the thing. The 1979 revolution wasn't some isolated event. Not at all. It was just one peak in this long, recurring pattern of the Iranian people demanding change. I mean, just look at this timeline. For over a century, generation after generation of Iranians have risen up. You've got the first push for a parliament way back in 1906, then Mossadegh's movement in the 50s, then the huge Green Movement protests in 2009, and on and on. The fight for democracy and self-determination, it has never, ever truly stopped. And that brings us right up to today, to a movement that has galvanized not just Iran, but the entire world in a way that feels, well, it just feels different from all the protests that came before. The catalyst, the spark that lit the flame, was the absolutely tragic death of one young woman, Mahsa Amini. She was just 22. She was arrested by Iran's morality police, supposedly for wearing her headscarf improperly, and she died in their custody. Her death ignited a nationwide uprising. The slogan of this revolution, the one chanted in the streets and shared all over the world, is woman, life, freedom. And it's so powerful because it captures this idea that the mandatory hijab, the oppression of women, has become the ultimate symbol of oppression for everyone in Iran, men included. And listen, this isn't just another protest. This is a revolution being led by women, even schoolgirls. And it's not anti-religion, it's pro-choice. You have women who wear the hijab by choice marching right alongside those who don't. It's got massive support from men in key sectors like the oil industry. And the goal here isn't just reform. It's to replace the whole theocracy with a secular republic. So that brings us right back to where we started. For 125 years, we've watched the cycle play out in Iran, this incredible hope for change met with brutal suppression. Generation after generation has risen up, only to be crushed. The question that history has yet to answer is this: will this generation, led by women and fighting for freedom, finally be the one to break that cycle?